Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Carol Metz Murray. Carol is a narrative leadership coach, consultant, professional speaker, and author. She lives the principles, resilience, and determination learned on her soul leadership journey through acute stress and burnout to discover her intrinsic naked leader. She is a mesmerizing communicator who walks her talk using radical presence and listening to create breakthroughs for clients. She is an international speaker, focused on naked leadership, the power of courage, and decisive action. Carol has book collaborated with Les Brown, Eric Lofholm, and John Asseroff. She collaborates with women and men to stand up, speak up, and step into the possibilities of a self-image adjustment to unleash the leader within. Carol, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. It is a pleasure having you on the show today.
Well, thank you, Dave, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here with you.
And I am happy to be here with you as well. And I think we got introduced by a mutual acquaintance. We found out that we really aligned on a lot of different levels, and we find ourselves recording the podcast today. So with that, let's get right down to the questions and have our listeners get to know more about you and your work.
Okay.
First question I have, Carol, is please tell our listeners about the experiences that have shaped your life path and your life passions.
Oh, gosh, this is really great, Dave. Are you sure we have 2 or 3 hours? Anyway, the experiences that shaped my life started when I was 5 years old, and my grade 8 dropout dad, who was a farmer, said to me, Carol, it's time you learned how to lead. And I spent a lot of time with my dad on the farm, and I remember, even to today, looking at him, it's like what are you talking about? And he said, we have horses. Yes, we had horses, and we have turkeys. And you're going to lead the horses, and you're going to learn to lead the turkeys. That was really my introduction into leadership. And at the age of 5 and 6, that probably was a master's, because there was me as this little girl with these big horses. And there were 2 horses that loved to aggravate my dad. One knew how to jump over the fences, and so it didn't matter what field he was in. If he wanted out, he would go across the fence. The other one, she knew how to open up gates. So in essence, the horses were always out. I spent time with them, and really, I learned about horses, probably learned more about how they lead people than versus people leading them. But it was great because they are powerful beings. Working with turkeys, well, that's another completely different story of getting a flock of turkeys to follow you. It's something like the sheep following the dog. But that was my beginning. And from that, I progressed as a young girl into leadership positions and then into work positions. My first leadership role was in a local government, being asked to go in and help it just get ready to reopen its offices. It had closed its offices because of some issues. I did that. I didn't have any credentials, but I learned that I love to serve. So that was me moving forward. On the other side of everything, Dave, there were also some things that had happened to me as a little girl. And one of them was that I was sexually assaulted on a number of occasions by a neighbor, and nobody believed me. And as a result of that, Dave, mixed in with who I was, I really questioned who I was. To help me deal with all of that, I became a workaholic. But I continued on with leadership and then also took on schooling to learn to be a leader, business, psychology, administration. Found my dream job of being a certified administrative administrator for a local government way up in the far north in the Yukon. And as a result of everything in my life to that point, as well as stepping into a marriage that was actually very violent, I burnt myself out. And that was a wake-up call, a true wake-up call, because the doctor said to me when I called the doctor was, Carol, you deal with this or I'll make you deal with it. That scared me. And I knew I needed to change my life. And I made my decision right there and then that I needed to discover who I was. And that really was the journey, the discovery of naked leadership. I continued on in leadership. I then studied coaching and became a coach. But this whole time, it was really discovering who I was. And through that, in that discovery, what I also, is becoming a coach, and it's helping others to also discover who they are. So it is all about learning to lead yourself, then live your dreams, learning to lead yourself before you lead others. And we are all leaders, Dave, all of us, regardless of what role we are playing or what roles we are playing. We often think of leaders in business and corporations. We're leaders in our own lives. We're leaders in our families. We're leaders with our children, all of it. So that really is a very condensed version of who I am. And here I am. And I will also say to you is that discovery and that ongoing discovery of the naked leader, it continues. To be in service to others and be in service to yourself is constantly, before me. And I now call that, it's like a self-image adjustment. So it's going deeper and deeper into my heart so that I can truly serve myself and others.
Yes, and one of the things that struck me in addition to everything else that you mentioned, is that if we can't serve ourselves, we can't serve others. If we can't be true to ourselves, we can't be genuine or true or authentic in a leadership capacity with anybody else. If our cup is not filled, we can't fill somebody else's cup. And I'm taking this from a friend of mine. So I think one of the tenets of leadership is that we need to be aware of who we are, how we relate to the world, how we relate to ourselves. We also have to work through our own traumas and challenges so that we can discover authenticity and we can learn how to become resilient and transcend those challenges so we can model resilience for somebody else and model appropriate leadership for somebody else. We can't do that until we do the work on ourselves first.
You are absolutely right. We need to put ourselves first and really look at ourselves, do our own inner work. And as I say to folks, when people look at me and say, well, what do you mean a naked leader? And that to do my own work. And I said, well, what I've discovered, the longest journey in life is the journey from here, from your head to your heart. That's about 18 inches. But that is the longest journey that one takes. Our heads are beautiful computers. I mean, they're amazing. But in essence, when we put our heart first and have our head support our heart, life is completely different. And so that journey is amazing. Sometimes we go kicking and screaming, but it's so critical to do our own work, to know who we are, to allow that authenticity to come forward, to allow our resilience to show up, our courage, all of it.
Well, I think in a leadership capacity, the only way we can truly be effective leaders is if we lead with our hearts, if we speak with our hearts, speak through our hearts, and we become genuine and authentic with our own emotions and with our own feelings, and to try to develop relationships with those, professional relationships with those that we are charged to mentor and charged to supervise. And I think whether you're a teacher, whether you're a leader in business, whether you're modeling leadership in your family, it all starts from here. It all starts from what can I offer from myself that's going to help build authentic relationships with those people who are relying on me. And if we can't build relationships, Carol, from my perspective, we are not going to make lasting bonds with anybody. And we're going to be transient leaders as opposed to authentic leaders.
Yes, absolutely. And truly, we are at a time in the 21st century where that authenticity is really being called. Like we're all being asked to step forward or step into our hearts and lead from that place of authenticity. Yeah.
And also, I wanted to just, your personal experiences with being sexually assaulted in a violent marriage. I'm glad you were able to survive first and then thrive through all of that, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation today. And I think authenticity is something that when you are a victim of abuse, when you're victimized, you don't have a sense of really who you are. Your identity is determined through the eyes of your perpetrators. And I've talked to individuals who have been assault victims before, and they don't have a sense of who they are because they only identified who they were through either how well they were able to please their perpetrator, how well they were able to survive their perpetrator. They had no true sense of their own identity. And the fact that you left that and you said, okay, I'm going to find out who I am now. I'm going to find out who Carol Metz Murray is in this world around me. Those experiences, to me, sound like it drives the work that you do with people who request your services.
Yes, it does. And I feel truly blessed. And you were right, is that when somebody is victimized, they can see themselves in that light as being that victim. The journey of discovery really had me looking at those experiences and also looking at me, and then to see the lessons and the gifts that came out of all of that, and really to embrace those gifts and the truth of who I am. And here I am. I mean, if I hadn't, you're right, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And because I've been gifted in essence to be on this journey, to be in service, I really can feel people's, their energies, where they're at, and be in service. I may not say anything to them, but I will hold space for them. Right? Just be there for them and let them know that the space is secure. It is safe. They can be who they are so that they can begin to let go and release feelings and emotions that are not serving them. So I've been very blessed in that way. Absolutely.
Well, and I'm glad also to hear you say that you emphasize safety and security, because for individuals who have been traumatized, if they don't feel safe, they don't feel secure, they're not going to want to develop a relationship with a coach, with a clinician, with anybody. They need to feel that where they're at is a safe and sacred space for them to be who they need to be in that particular moment.
Absolutely. And if I may share with you, Dave, I had what I will say is a privilege and an honor to be a co-facilitator for a men's group. And the men that came to the group were, yes, some of them had been through a court system and been charged with assault. So in essence, they were the perpetrators. There were some who came who had been victimized as a result of abuse. And there were others who came who wanted to learn how to have better relationships. But really and truly, as being the only woman with a group of 8 participants and holding space for them and watching them begin to transform when they felt safe
Mm-hmm.
and secure, and when they also felt heard. It was, for me, the best way, the metaphor to use is like the flower that begins to open and begin to blossom. And they began to open up and, in essence, see parts of themselves that they had never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And they will begin to let go of behaviors that weren't serving them
Mm-hmm.
anywhere else. People need to feel safe in order to open up and share. So, yes, I was blessed.
If I were to come to you, let's say as a client, and I wanted to embrace naked leadership, and I was having difficulty really finding my true authentic self because of the traumas that I experienced, the victimization that I had undergone, whether it be through abuse, through abandonment or neglect. First of all, what would you expect of me as a client, or what could I expect of you as a mentor? And what type of resources could you provide that could help me tap into my true authentic self and empower myself to lead the life that I truly want to manifest?
So, if you were coming to me as a client, Dave, I am a guide. I am, another way to describe it is I am your champions. So, really and truly, it is meeting you where you are at. And then it is really and truly listening to you. And when I am with the client, and I do this in life as well, it's what I do is I radically listen. And what I mean by that is, yes, it's listening with my ears, but it's also listening to you with my eyes and my heart and picking up what's going on for you. So in meeting you where you're at, it really is beginning to create that relationship. And as we just talked about, is to develop that trust and that safety where you as a client can begin to open up. One of the very first things in that journey is we begin to look at what do you value in life? And have you ever looked at the values that drive your life? Because that will also indicate where you're at or where you want to be. So really and truly, a lot of that discovery is that you as a client drive the bus. I'm right there with you, but it's your story because I'm a certified narrative coach, and it is about your story. It's about what brought you to this point. And then it's to also begin to look inside of you for the answers. We may, in resources, do a timeline of, well, here you are, here we are today. What's your timeline? Looking at events in your life. Maybe there's something that took place when you were 6 years old, maybe again when you were 16, and looking at those. And then also looking at the emotions that are underneath sitting inside of you that have caused some misalignment because they haven't been addressed. And so it's a matter of that walking, but also opening up and really and truly having a look at what is going on. It depends entirely on who you are and where you are at. One of the things that I just recently had a client say to me, Dave, was they so appreciated working with me because I didn't come in with saying, well, you need to do this and this and this process. It was that I met them where they were at. I listened to their ideas and dreams, and then we worked with that. We worked with those dreams. Okay, those are your dreams. What will it take for you to move those dreams forward? And there was personal inner work that they also were called upon to do. Part of it was the values exercise, but also was them looking at the iceberg of emotions and discovering what emotions were holding them back. And what they said was, you were there for me, you guided me, you didn't drive my bus, but in essence, you supported me while I made the decisions, and you held me responsible and accountable for the decisions that I had made. Thank you, because here I am now. I have not one business running, but two. And so my journey of working with clients is first and foremost, meet them where they are at and define what it is that they need, and then begin to put those resources in place.
So basically, it's a framework that empowers individuals to find their own truth, whatever that truth may be.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think particularly whether the trauma is due to grief, whether it's due to abuse, individuals do feel disempowered. They feel like they have no self-efficacy in terms of being able to affect change on their own because they have been victimized and their power has been taken away. So I think taking almost like the approach is very similar to motivational interviewing. Let's see where you're at. How can I help you? Tell me your story. You hold space for that story. I like the narrative therapy approach because they can take a look at their past, see how it orchestrates their present, and understand what they wanted to have in the present to manifest the future of their dreams. So that allows them to kind of put together a cohesive narrative of all points in their lives and say, okay, this is what happened, but what can I also learn? What gifts did I discover from the trauma that I experienced, whether it was being able to finally empower myself to say, I'm done. I am not going to subject myself to this type of environment, this type of abuse, and, find out who you truly want to be. Or if it's just, again, being empowered simply to have somebody listen to your story and guide you in terms of pointing out things that you did well, maybe some opportunities for improvement, and then allowing them to say, okay, where do I go from here?
And through that whole process, what also happens is that as we self-empower, courage gets stronger, confidence builds, and the world begins to look different. We accept ourselves. We, in essence, connect back with our hearts and open our heart. So yes, the world suddenly looks much more colorful than it had.
And we also know that where we're at this particular point is not the end of our story. Our story is going to continue to evolve as we allow ourselves and empower ourselves to open up to experiences that are going to enrich our soul. They're going to help us, again, embrace a leadership role, however that looks, whether it's servant leadership, whether it's being in a position where you're leading from the front or in a decision-making capacity. Being in touch with who you are is going to help you become a more authentic leader. A naked leader, of course, in the figurative sense and not the literal sense.
Yes, there's always a qualifier about naked leadership.
Yeah. Yet I have to admit, when I saw that, I had a smile on my face. I said, I really got to explore this with Carol because I'm sure she doesn't mean this literally. I'm sure and I kind of figured, but it kind of amused me. And I said, that would get my attention. That would make me want to call you to find out more about that. So I found this message from you in the section of your website titled Why Naked Leadership is Important to Me. And I'm just going to read this passage and I'm going to ask you to kind of reflect on this a bit. Never explain yourself to anyone because the person who likes you doesn't need it and the person who dislikes you won't believe it. So now what's the significance of this message and how do you use it to empower those you serve to recognize the importance of naked leadership in their lives?
The importance of that message is really and truly when we like ourselves, when we love ourselves, and we are ourselves. That really is what matters. And I'm not talking about being arrogant here. This is truly claiming who you are. Someone can come along and decide that they don't like you. You can take that on and begin to self-doubt, or you can thank them. If they've raised concern, thank them very much. However, you continue to stand in your own inner power.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as I say, whether somebody likes me or not, that's their business. And if I like me, and I am living from my heart, and that love is radiating, that really is my message and my service to you. Yeah.
And I think when we stand in our truth, and I try to explain this part of life to my students at Utica University, when you stand in your truth and you wear your beliefs on your sleeve, it's intimidating for a lot of people. And individuals who are in leadership roles who are very transparent with their beliefs automatically become targets. But that is the other person's issue. It's not you can't take that personally. You stand in your truth. And as long as what you are doing is consistent with your beliefs of what's right or wrong, it's morally correct, it's not hurting anybody, it's for the good of the people that you're working with, then it's all good. If you deviate from your specific standards of what is effective leadership or what constitutes an effective decision that takes into account the needs of everybody, if that isn't happening, where you're not taking a look at the impact of any decision on the organization, the individuals that you're working with, then you need to self-evaluate. But when you wear your truth on your sleeve, you become a target. And you can't take that personally. That is the other person's issue, not yours.
And that, yes, it is the other person's issues. And it may, for them, whatever it might be, because you are shining your light, that may make them uncomfortable.
Yep.
You're right. It's their issue. It's their choice. what are they going to do about it?
That's right. Yep. And, the best leaders I know are the ones that stay their ground, but do it yet with integrity, with authenticity, and they're conscious of listening to the other person's side, not attacking and not trying to intentionally hurt that person because of what they believe. Like you said, we can take information that people gives us and look at it as an observation. We can do one of three things with observations. We can believe the entire observation is valid and see what we can do to integrate that feedback into our daily routine. We could say, part of what you're saying is valid. The other parts isn't. So I'm going to incorporate the parts that are valid into my belief system. Or third, we can disregard all of it. And that is our right as human beings. That is our right as individuals who have free will to do that.
We do. We absolutely do. But then that is what makes the journey of life so rich, so much fun. Life is about growth and about sharing and about contribution and connection. Yes, that's the richness of life.
And the best leaders I know have all those qualities that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Connection, compassion, the ability to listen, the ability to be flexible in terms of, changing organizational demands, the ability to communicate authentically with their staff when things need to be changed. They say what they mean and they mean what they say.
Yeah.
They talk the talk and they walk the walk. And what it all comes down to is naked leadership equals integrity.
Yeah.
And authenticity. That is my own interpretation of that in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So
that is naked leadership. And you get to keep your clothes on.
Oh, wonderful. That's even better. That would probably set back civilization many years if they saw me with my clothes off. So, and as being somebody who believes in the goodness of humanity and who likes to treat my fellow human beings, with respect, certainly doing it with my clothes on is the way to go. So,
Okay.
So, Carol, if you could leave our listeners with just one thing today, what would that be? Or one thing with subcategories. I'm good with that too.
The one thing that I will leave the listeners with today is a question of who are you being in this moment? Because or live the life often about doing. So really the question is, who are you being? Who would you need to be to live the life that you desire?
That's a good lesson to leave with our audience today. So thank you for that, Carol. My final question is if individuals want to get in touch with you, contact you about your services, find out what else you got going on in the business world, what's the best way for them to do that?
Thank you for asking. They can get a hold of me either on my website, which is carolmetzmurray.com, or they can get a hold of me on LinkedIn at Carol Metz Murray.
And I'll make sure all of that information gets into the episode notes, both when it's released in audio version and on YouTube as well. Carol, with that, thank you so much for sharing space with me today on the Teaching Journeys podcast. I truly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Well, thank you, Dave. This has been wonderful to be on your podcast and have this conversation with you. I have so enjoyed my time with you. And I too hope that we can be on a podcast again in the future. And because this is now December the 4th, it's early in the month, but I'm going to wish you a happy new year and a very Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well, Carol, to you and your family. And I'm sure our paths are going to cross again in 2025.
I'm sure that they will. So take care.
You too. And with that, that is a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.